hands, anything that was exposed. Worked all day. Well, Maggie got home that night about 5 o'clock, came out to inspect the progress of the shed, and she took one look at me and she said, "Did you not put on sunscreen like I told you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I did it first thing in the morning." She said, "So you only did it once?" I said, "Well, yeah, I thought once is enough." She said, "You're in the sun all day. You need to put it on at least twice, in the morning and then when you come back out after lunch." Okay. So the next day, before I went out, I put the sunscreen on and worked all morning. Lunch, I went in, and then after lunch, I put some sunscreen on, went back out to work until about 5 o'clock, and Maggie came home, and I'm pretty proud to show my progress on the shed. And without even looking at the shed, she said to me, "You didn't listen to me, did you? You're redder than you were yesterday." And I said, "No, honest to God, honey, I did. I put it on in the morning right away, and I put some on after lunch." Well, if those of you remember that last week of May, it was actually pretty warm for us. And she said, "Well, you're obviously sweating so much during the course of the day that you're sweating it off. So you need to put it on much more regularly." So Wednesday morning, to make sure that I didn't end up in the proverbial marital doghouse, I literally put the little brown bottle right next to my shed. And every hour on the hour, I put sunscreen on. She got home that night and took one look. I could tell right as soon as she got out of the car, I was in the doghouse. "Why are you not listening to me? You're even redder than you were the last 2 days. What have you been doing?" And I picked up the little brown bottle. I said, "Honey, see, I kept it right here. I've been putting it on every hour on the hour." She said, "Is that what you've been using all week?" I said, "Yeah, why, what?" "That's not sunscreen, that's my bronzer." I don't even know what bronzer is. All I knew was a little brown bottle and it had a sun on it. I thought that was sunscreen. She said, "Well, did you read the label?" I didn't read the label. I just looked at it and thought it was sunscreen. Well, you know what I learned? Is if you actually don't read something, you can end up in pretty deep doo-doo. Matter of fact, if you don't read it, you can end up pretty red. Well, one of the things I'm going to propose tonight, and when I have you in a couple of weeks, is that we actually read the actual words of Jesus. And here's why I'm proposing that. I think where we've done harm to ourselves and to others in the name of religion is when we put some words in the mouth of Jesus that really aren't there. Or we've heard stories or anecdotes, but we actually haven't actually read what Jesus said, and that's caused problems. I'll give you a couple examples. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, "God helps those who help themselves"?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you know where it's found? On the lips of Jesus? No. Nowhere. Jesus has never said that. Some of you have heard me tell this story because it's one of my little red wagons that I like to pull from time to time. But every now and then I'll turn on EWTN or some other religious station just to kind of see what people are saying. And at one point in time, this religious individual stood up and he said, "Yeah, I'm pretty confident about things in life," because the interviewer was saying, "Well, are you nervous? Or are you anxious about what you're about to do?" And he said, "No, I go from the Gospel of Luke, the theme of confidence." And Maggie was sitting right next to me, and I just jumped out of the chair. I was wild. Like, the word confident is never once found in the Gospel of Luke, okay? Let alone not a theme, right? Well, the problem is that if you have some people who are watching that, and they're suffering from severe anxiety, or just terribly anxious about things, and they go, "Geez, I'm a good Catholic, and that religious leader said I'm supposed to be confident. I'm not always confident." And then they beat themselves up for an expectation that actually has never come from the mouth of Jesus. So I propose tonight and in a couple of weeks that we actually look at what Jesus said about us, because I think sometimes we forget how radically loved we are by God. And I'm going to look at that not from the perspective of John McHugh, but from what Jesus says about us. So let's start by Gospel of Matthew chapter 13. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Great crowds gathered around him, so that he got into a boat and sat there. And the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they had not much soil. And immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell upon thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil, and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Now consider this image that Jesus used, the image of a seed. Because one of the things that we know about seeds, those of you who are planters, they don't look like much. As a matter of fact, those of you who plant herbs, you know especially what I'm talking about. I love to plant basil every year. And you know how small a basil seed is? And it's black. So it's so small and it's so almost invisible that once you put it in the ground, it's like, where is it? Did I put some there? You almost like you can't see it anymore. And one of Jesus' first image for God's presence in our life is that it's not always that easy to be seen. You know, we think that God comes to us in this thunderclap or this profound religious experience. And sometimes God is way more subtle than that. I'll give you a personal example. The 3 things I still remember from my confirmation when I was a junior in high school. 3 things. For those of you of my age and my generation, many of us in this diocese were confirmed by Bishop John Paul. So I still remember that very booming John Wayne voice that he had. And I still remember his first line of his confirmation homily. There are 4 signs in the sacrament of confirmation. The first sign is a verbal sign. I do. Some of you might remember Bishop Paul's voice. And I remember that. The second thing I remember was my experience of a confirmation sponsor. I actually chose my pastor, Father Abe, to be my sponsor. So as my classmates were going up to be confirmed by Bishop Paul was standing there, and Father Abe was standing right next to Bishop Paul, and the student would come up and kneel before the bishop, and Father Abe and their sponsor would come up and put their right hand on the shoulder. Got to be my turn, I went up there, and I knelt down, and Father Abe is still standing next to the bishop. So I'm trying to give him eye contact, like, hey, come down. You're supposed to be right next to me, putting your hand on my shoulder. And he's not looking, right? So finally, Bishop Paul, after a very uncomfortable long silence, said, son, where is your sponsor? And I said, he's Father Abe right there. And Father Abe says, loud enough for the whole congregation to hear, oh, I forgot! That's the second thing I remember. The third thing I remember from actually before the sacrament of confirmation was our religious lessons from Sister Agna. And one of the things that she said, you know, when you receive the gifts of the Holy Spirit, you're going to be ontologically changed. Now, I don't know what ontologically changed meant, but all I figured was it meant that when I get these gifts of the Holy Spirit, I'm going to feel wildly different when I get it, right? So I remember Bishop Paul confirming me, and I'm standing up, I go back to the pew, I'm like, I don't feel any different. I felt just the way I did before. Well, maybe this is like a delayed reaction. Maybe like tomorrow I'm going to be like really holy. You know? So I remember the next morning I got up and like, I was still angry with my sister. I still had thoughts in my head that I thought I should have. Well, maybe it's even more of a delayed reaction. Maybe it takes like 7 days, you know, 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, 7 days, whatever kind of. And nothing changed. I felt exactly the same way as I did before. But that's exactly what Jesus says. It's a small seed that's planted, and there's the possibility you look at it, where's the seed? I don't know where it's at. And I've heard so many people say, you know, I've never had a religious experience. I've never had really this deep experience of God in my life. Or I go to Mass every Sunday, and I don't get anything out of it because I don't feel any different when I walk out. Welcome to true, legitimate religious experience. The experience of God in the thunderbolt, where God all of a sudden whamming you, is actually quite rare. That Jesus said, how do we experience God's presence in our life? Well, it's like a seed. And sometimes it's going to be hard to see, and sometimes it's going to be hard to find. The other thing, seeds disappear for a time. You know, if I probably could challenge you to go back and try to find those seeds. But at some point in time, you know, they really start to become part of the earth, and you really, even a small basil, you're not going to be able to find it. They disappear for a while. That's the nature of what a seed does. And if I were to challenge all of you, I want you to go back and try to find all the instances in your life in which God has been active. See if you can pinpoint them. You won't be able to do it here. Because you don't know a seed until it comes time for the harvest of what's really happened. So for all of us, it's not going to be till harvest time in which we can really accurately look back and, oh yeah, God was active there. Oh, that was God. Oh wow, God was that. Whoa. It's not till the harvest that we realize that the seed has actually done what a seed is supposed to do. If I also challenge you to do this, look back at your life and find all the times in which you have been an instrument of God for others. See if you can pinpoint all those times in which you've been just a source of grace for others, of bringing the gospel. See if you can pinpoint all those examples in your life. I would bet now, prior to the harvest, none of us will ever know the profound ways in which we've touched others. And it won't be till the harvest, and when you sit down and go, wow, I made a difference. Boy, I don't even remember saying that, and that person was brought closer to God. We'll never be able to spot all those seeds until the harvest. I'll give you an example. As Carl knows, I go throughout the tri-state area talking about purpose at work as part of my job at Quick Trip. Well, many years ago, I was over in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, at Mercury Marine, giving a 2-hour presentation on purpose at work. It's a 2-hour presentation on how you find purpose in your jobs. And as I'm doing this, their lead engineer was in the back corner of the room. Big, tough guy, late 50s, balding. Looked like the kind of guy that if it was closing time at the bar scene, you wouldn't mess with this guy, because he'd mess with you, you know? Well, I could tell from his body language that he's not buying what I'm selling, you know? So at the end of the 2-hour presentation, I said, any questions, comments, concerns? From the back of the room, he raises his hand, and he points to my slides, my PowerPoint slides, in front of the room, and says, this is a load of fill in the blank. He said, there's no purpose in what I do. I design and build boat motors. There's no blank purpose in that. Like, sir, can I have 5 minutes? The first 7 years of my life, my family lived in South Milwaukee. And those of you who've ever heard me talk about my dad, you know that I describe him in this way. I made Jeff Foxworthy look like a cultured genius, okay? And my dad used 4-letter words as nouns, adjectives, adverbs, commas, prepositions, okay, kind of thing. Smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day, ate the fat off the pork chop because that's where all the flavor's at, and most of the liquid that he consumed was fermented in nature, okay? I was a construction worker, never graduated high school, and had an Irish temper. So if things hadn't gone well at the job site that day, we knew about it when Dad got home. You know that old adage, if something doesn't go well at work, you leave it at the door, you don't bring it home? Not true in the McHugh household. Okay? If it didn't go well at the job site that day, we knew about it the moment Dad walked through that door. But my dad's attitude and disposition changed completely at the beginning of every summer. And this is how it happened. It started on Memorial Day. Memorial Day weekend, to be exact. Friday of Memorial Day weekend at 5 o'clock. Dad would come home, and he would back our 1973 Dodge Charger up to this boat that had a Mercury Marine on the back, 80 horse. And then we would drive 5 hours north up to northern Wisconsin, north of Mercer, a little place called Pine Lake. Take us 5 hours to get there. We get to the cottage about 11:30 at night. Dad would put the boat in the water. I was 4 years old at the time, and he put me in the boat. And then we drive out to the middle of the lake, and he turned the boat motor off. And then he put my life jacket on nice and tight, and then put me in his arms and go, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and he'd throw me in the lake. And then Dad would come in, we'd go swim until about midnight, and then we'd get back in the boat, go back to the cottage. And for the next 2.5 days, my dad's attitude completely changed. He was fun to be with. He was relaxed. It's not like he was my dad, but the ideal older brother you always wanted to have. And then on Monday, on Memorial Day, at noon, Dad would put the boat back on the trailer. And we would drive 5 hours south from northern Wisconsin back to Milwaukee. If any of you have ever done that trip, you know you go on Highway 41 through Fond du Lac, right past the Mercury Marine plant. Now, I was a 4-year-old boy at the time, backseat of the Charger. And Dad would say to me, Johnny, look out the window. You see that big building? That's the home of the boat motor. And I remember being a 4-year-old boy looking at that building, being so grateful that it existed. Because inside that building, they built something that changed my dad. And I said, sir, I don't know if you were working here at Mercury Marine at the time, but if you were, I want to thank you for building something that has brought for me the best memories of my dad. He's been gone now 10 years. Thank you. Big, tough engineer, and there's tears streaming down his cheeks. And he walked out, he said, hey, thanks for teaching me that my job has a purpose. I realize that I don't build boat motors. I realize I bring joy to people's lives. And there's a difference. Now, the sad thing for me is he was on the verge of retirement. And so for 35 years, he never knew how he was a source of grace for other people. That's a universal experience. None of us will know the profound ways in which we have helped God plant a seed in others. We won't know that until the harvest. And to expect that we know it now, that's not realistic. That's not how